Craignez le son de la cloche. Les assassins de l'église ne sont jamais bien loin.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Sin.
Hi, everyone. And welcome to the Snag Covenant, episode 287. And today, we're talking about both the Red Phantom Brador and the Incel Brador.
Brador is an incel.
He lives in a cell.
I thought you were making a joke there.
How would you call him?
The Brador that's in the cell?
Yeah, but that's so long and not poetic.
Do you want to do take 3?
So, Sophie.
Yes.
Does the name Brador have any significance?
Not as far as the retail build is concerned.
What does that mean?
It means that it probably does have significance if we factor in stuff they removed a long time ago.
Do you want to give a TLDR on that?
Okay, TLDR, a lot of the, names and, things in the Bloodborne DLC are actually the names of characters they cut from the base game. And Brador is one of those. The initial, early versions of Bloodborne, so early we don't actually have them, but we have, data that pertains to them, they had a church assassin called Brandon. So you can see how, Brador, Brandon, it's like a recycling of the Brandon concept, only now it's Brador.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sophie, I googled the term Brador.
Yeah.
The term Brador may refer to Brador or Brador Bay, a community within Blanc-Sablon, Quebec, Canada. What's so funny?
Oh, I want everyone listening to this to know, right. When we sat down to record this, Sin was saying, I went back, I listened to the old ones, and there's a lot of problems in them, there's a lot of things that I would cut. So I'm really glad to be able to do these again, because I can cut all the stuff that's irrelevant, I can get rid of all the bad stuff. And she is already Brador is named after a bay in Canada. Hi, Sophie here. It turns out that, in true Snack Covenant fashion, our episode about Brador doesn't properly explain who Brador is because Sin decided he was actually a bay. Brador is a character I relate very strongly to because he spends all day trapped in a small room and has to constantly send out avatars of himself to cover up for other people's mistakes. Just imagine that every invasion is preceded by Brador saying, "Hi, Brador here," and you start to get the gist of it. Back to the podcast, there's 5 of these. There's 5 of these fucking things, it's awful.
Let's look at Brador's concept art.
Certainly.
Could you please describe it?
The concept art of Brador looks very similar to the in-game version, with one difference.
What is it?
This Brador has a weird mask. It looks like the Canehurst mask. It's like a sort of, not quite a beak, but it has a sort of pointed tip to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's supposed to be a skull or it's metal or what, but...
That's a good observation, Sophie.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm zooming into it, and it looks like the mask from Dishonored.
Okay.
But you're right, it does seem to have a pointed beak.
This might have something to do with the Brandon character.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon was probably the character who became Eileen. The name Brandon means crow. That's where the name comes from. There's references in the data. This is what I mean by this character existed, we've just never seen them. But there's references in the data to a group called Brandon's Blood Crows.
Mm-hmm.
As if they're a faction.
Right.
And then Eileen, obviously the crow hunter, and her purpose in the game, she's kind of an assassin.
Yeah.
She's not working for the church, but her purpose is to kill hunters who are getting blood drunk. So It kind of makes sense that, like, the church would have assassins that were there to put down the hunters who were tipping over into beasthood, and Eileen is basically that, but they make her like an independent group rather than
Independent contractor.
yeah, rather than someone who works for the church. Also, Eileen's like outfit, if you look at it, it looks very similar to what the church servants are wearing. Like it's the same sort of design, and she has like the church sort of like incense stuff hanging off her like Gascoigne does. So
And if you look at the silhouette of the concept art, it's very similar to Eileen's silhouette.
yeah, it's because he's got the hide becomes a cape, yeah. And also, like, the Bloody Crow of Canehurst is probably, like, a callback to that as well. Because they're literally called the Bloody Crow.
Yeah.
And they're a mixture of, like, Eileen's set with that beak mask. The Canehurst beak mask, yeah.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Sin.
We first encounter Brador in a prison cell in the Hunter's Nightmare after defeating Ludwig, the killer of Marias.
Yes, that's true.
He's sitting on the floor next to a broken bed. He's wearing a foreign bell.
Wearing a bell. I think you mean he's wearing a foreign garb. He's not wearing a giant bell costume. He was a very ineffective assassin. His clothing was covered in bells, so he made a loud ringing noise every time he approached.
Thank you, Sophie. What I meant to say was this. He's wearing a garb that
Yes.
looks like the foreign garb,
Yes, he is.
and he's ringing a bell.
Yeah.
Now, Sophie, tell me a little bit about the set.
So Brador's set is, like you said, it's the foreign set that we start the game in. The difference is that it is covered in the blood and fur and what looks to be some sort of internal organ from a cleric beast.
Right.
Right, and it's also got really, really high defense. The foreign set that we start the game in has absolutely dreadful defense, but Brador's set's actually really, really high.
I guess it's the beast parts that are like enhancing it.
Yeah.
I think Brador's testimony is super cool. Like the name is cool and the way it looks is very neat.
When there's something I did that was like really nerdy,
Mm-hmm.
I went all the way to the end of the game, got Brador's testimony, and then I used to co-op against the cleric beast, like on a very low level, and then when I beat it, I would swap it out to the Brador testimony hat.
That's like some role play right there.
It was, yeah. It was roleplay. It's been a really long time getting to the fishing hamlet on, I think, level 20. For, frankly, very little reward. No one's ever said that was cool.
Aww.
Yeah.
Now, Brador,
Mm-hmm.
physically, he has a gray beard and gray hair.
Yes.
So he's a little bit older.
His skin is also grey. He looks like he has that, when you have, like, too much silver in your diet and your skin goes blue.
How old do you think he is?
Do we have to do this? Alright, young Brador, right, who we also encounter, spoiler.
We're not there yet.
Oh, for God's... Okay, I have no idea how old Brador is. If only we had him at another point in time, but we don't.
Thank you, Sophie. Okay, fine, tell me.
So we see a young Brador a few times. Presumably that's like Brador in his prime before he was sent to the Nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And it mentions that he has been in that cell for a very long time.
Yeah.
So, if we say that the time frame of Bloodborne is about 20 years, I think he's been in the cell for probably most of that.
Okay.
So he's probably like, he's in his like 60s now or something like that.
So unlike Mikolash, Brador ages in the Nightmare.
Brador is very confusing.
Okay.
Right, so the problem is with figuring this out that like, Brador is effectively treated as though he's actually in a physical cell. Like, it talks about, like, the church locked him away in the cell. He has guards in the cell. That is, like, that whole section where Brador is, that is behaving as though it is, like, not in the Nightmare, as strange as that sounds. Yeah, so I don't know how it works, but I think we have to assume, like, no, Brador is, like, maybe he goes into the Nightmare and it comes out again? I don't know.
Maybe this is his, like, vacation house.
A vacation in the cell.
It's actually bigger than my living room.
Yeah.
Doesn't it have a fireplace?
It has a bunch of beds and everything.
Did I imagine a fireplace?
I think so.
Okay. You know what? It probably has, like, another room that we get to. I mean, I just never tried to look for secret doors in the cell.
I did.
Thank you, Sophie. Why and how did Brador end up in the nightmare?
Good question, because again, it doesn't actually, like, specifically say when he went into the nightmare and when he was in a prison cell in the waking world. It is all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
This story is, if we just, like, let's just remove nightmare real world distinctions for a second.
Okay.
Okay. Brador is someone who was an assassin for the Healing Church in the very, very early days of the Healing Church. He had a companion with him who he worked with.
Mm-hmm.
They transformed into a cleric beast. Brador subsequently killed them, and that's where the beast hide on his clothing comes from. And after he did that, it actually says he hid himself away.
So he was probably so heartbroken over killing his own friend and partner that he's like, I'm gonna put myself in timeout.
He's got to the naughty step. So, it says Brador hid himself away. He wasn't locked away by the church.
Mm-hmm.
Although technically he was working for the church at the time, so he possibly sees this as just part of the church's mission. Like, we can't have this guy walking around making it obvious that the Healing Church is actually the cause of the beast problem. So he's possibly doing it, like, for the good of everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. He might also be frightened of, like, what might happen. Maybe he will transform if he continues to hunt. So when he hides himself away, the Healing Church give him a bell. And that bell is basically the sinister resonant bell that we used to invade. It's actually the same model. And Brador basically spends his life in the cell ringing that bell over and over again, invading people as they go into the fishing hamlet. So it's literally what he's doing. He's just there and he's just ringing, and then he's invading people in the hamlet, and then if they beat him, he invades again, and he's doing that over and over again to try to keep everybody away from the hamlet. He's basically like the next line of defense after Maria to stop you getting to Cause, and the orphan of Cause is Brador.
Since we know Brador locked himself away willingly,
Yeah.
did he ask the church to provide him with a bell to invade people, or did the church find him a new job and gave him this bell and told him, now you're going to be an assassin invader with a bell?
Well, he was already an assassin.
Yeah, but now you're a bell invader assassin.
He's just working remotely. Yeah, it's like there's a beast plague on. Our assassins can now work remotely.
Yes!
But yeah, Brador is like... I don't know at what point you say, like, Brador and the church really diverge, because it seems like Brador is just fanatical and he will do whatever is best for the church, is sort of also what he wants. Like, he's referred to as a madman, like, often. The other thing he apparently is doing, although we don't see him do it, is he's using the bloodletter weapon that he wields to remove blood from himself.
Mm-hmm.
So he probably does believe that, like, only by removing all this blood from himself can he be saved. Similar, I guess, to, like, Lawrence as the bloodletting beast.
Mm-hmm.
This notion that, like, I know that the thing that's wrong with me is my blood, so I'll retain humanity by just removing blood from myself. So Brador is, like, stabbing himself to get the blood out, and if you look at the cuts on the bloodletting beast's back, the bloodletter goes all the way through you. It does come out your back.
Yeah.
But I think that's more like if you were whipping your own back, if you sort of like Ariandel does in the Dark Souls DLC. If you just imagine you had a whip and you're flicking it over your shoulder and, like, cutting your back up to bleed yourself. I think that's what Lawrence was doing. Yeah, but yeah, they're very similar, I guess, characters where it's like... But they're not actually, are they? Because they're similar in that respect, but also, like, Brador seems to genuinely believe everything, whereas Lawrence seems a lot more cynical. He's in so deep that he'll do anything to win because he's lost everything if he doesn't. Whereas Brador does genuinely seem to believe very fanatical, kind of Gascoigne when he's in that just before he transforms and he's saying there's beasts everywhere and he's howling you'll be one soon. Sort of Brador is
But that's because he's blood drunk.
no, but Brador is tipping over into that, I think.
Oh yeah?
He's frightened of doing that, so he's expelling the blood from himself, but he's also got that sort of fanaticism.
Right.
Everything is just it's vitally important that we keep the secret and important that we kill all the beasts.
It's true, because he could just be no, I'm gonna sit in the cell and I'm gonna do nothing.
Yeah, but the other thing about Brador is he kills members of the Healing Church.
Oh, no.
It doesn't quite make sense, but it's implied he did it. Which is when you go back to his cell after you get the key, you see, there's normally a church servant and a minister outside, and they're both dead. And Brador's Red Phantom is standing roughly where they were.
And you're did you do that? And he's do what? They were already dead. This is the nightmare. Anything could have happened.
That's true.
So is this a sign of him going a little bit blood drunk?
He says this thing when he dies. He just says nothing ever changes.
So he's being a little dramatic. So Sophie?
Yeah?
Did you know that bloodletting is a real thing?
No, tell me.
Well, bloodletting is when you basically withdraw blood from someone
Yeah?
in an attempt to cure a disease. And this was a rather popular practice, from what I understand, until the 19th century.
Right.
It would sometimes be effective, but not for the right reasons.
Which, even though I'd never heard of bloodletting before now, I intuitively believe it was probably used to treat fevers.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would lower your body temperature.
Mm-hmm. And there was this whole thing about the humors.
Yeah, the 4 humors, yeah. So the idea was that the human body is kept in balance by having these things called the 4 humors. So those are blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. And if you are sick, whether it is a physical complaint or you have a mental health problem, anything that's psychological, physical, it doesn't matter. It's because those things are out of alignment. So you have too much of something or not enough of something else. And there's this whole thing where the 4 humors are also combined with the 4 cardinal directions and the 4 elements, and they are combinations of things that are hot and dry, wet and cold, things like that. There's these it's all these opposites of opposites of opposites. We still kind of talk in those terms. If you describe someone as having a sort of phlegmatic personality, that's a reference to phlegm as one of the 4 humors. Or we talk about people being melancholic, which is a reference to black bile. If you had too much black bile in you, made you depressed. And that was connected with earth, because earth is a heavy, sort of cold element. Anyway, so the idea was okay, let's say you have too much blood in you, you're too sanguine. It's causing an imbalance. Blood, in this way of understanding the world, blood is hot, because it's also the 4 elements. So it's if you have a fever, you're getting a little too sanguine, we'll get the blood out of you. Oh, look, your body temperature has now fallen, I guess that worked.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's entirely reasonable thing to do.
I just found an article that says a case study found bloodletting to be useful for reducing triglycerides and cholesterol levels in a male patient with severe hypertriglycemia and ketoacidosis who did not respond to plasmapheresis. This is from 2019. I guess bloodletting is back on the table.
Bloodborne did it. Bloodborne comes out 2015. By 2019, bloodletting is back. Bravo, Miyazaki.
So, Sophie,
Yes.
do you think Brador physically and entirely took himself to the nightmare? Or is there a Brador body somewhere out there in the waking world, kind of like Mikolash?
I don't know because it doesn't really make any sense, what we're shown. I think it's probably like Simon, for instance. Like Simon goes in there, and Simon, it's never really explained. He's just like, oh, I see you also found your way into the nightmare.
Hmm.
Cool.
What are the various ways you can get to the nightmare?
If you don't have the Curse of Cos, or even if you do and you're just being a little tricky,
Yeah,
you can kind of like astrally project yourself to the nightmare.
that's right.
Yes, yeah, like a genius man Mikolash. And sit in a chair and think very hard, and then you wake up and you're somewhere else.
Smartest man alive.
You're one of the three smartest men alive, okay? Lawrence, Willem, Mikolash, the three smartest men alive, all failed completely. It's up to our hunter, a person who knows nothing about what is going on, and is basically just shrugging and pitting things to redeem humanity itself. Good evening. This is Queen Yharnam, and I've been asked, as someone with some expertise in the matter, exactly how one travels to and from the nightmare. These days, quite a lot of people will say, I travelled to the nightmare when I gave either a space rock or a rotted eyeball to an amygdala, and the amygdala took me there. Well, if that's the case, it wasn't really you doing the travelling, was it? It is also the case of Mikolash and the School of Mensis, who were able to project themselves to the nightmare where they happened to encounter me. Look, they said to me, we were able to travel to the nightmare too. Our minds are working on another plane of reality. We're the true heirs to the Eldritch truth. And I replied, gently, that these days there's a lot of pressure to make the Eldritch truth a little less exclusive. And when I did it, it was a bit more complicated. Back to the podcast.
Now, let's look at Brador's dialogue. He says, are you a hunter? Well, that's very odd. Do you hear the toll of the bell?
Yeah, and do you?
Me, right now? In real life?
No, was Brador there in real life?
Oh my god, this is like a horror movie. Like, oh no, if you hear the toll of the bell, Brador's coming for you.
Yeah, that's literally how the Hamlet works.
Oh my god, it's so scary.
It came out 5 years ago.
It's still scary.
This is like those stupid, I rang my bell at 3 a.m. Brador visits real?
Thank you, Sophie. So, if you say that you hear the bell, what does Brador say?
Liar, such pettiness will be your undoing. The beasts you seek will not be found here. Go back to your hunt, and if you have the chance, put the night behind you. Places better left untouched, secrets better left alone. Only a fool would so brazenly roam.
So he's basically warning you. Don't go any further.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as what Maria says.
But how does he know you don't hear the bell yet?
Because you can only hear the bell if you're in the hamlet.
Oh, and he knows that.
It's his bell.
If he never left his cell, how would you know where it rings?
That's true, you got me there.
Thank you.
I think he knows that, you don't have that area opened up yet, so he can't invade you.
Thank you, Sophie. Now, if you say, no, I don't hear anything, what does he say?
Very well. The beast you seek will not be found here. Go back to your hunt, and if you have the chance, put this night behind you. Places better left untouched, secrets better left alone. Only a fool would so brazenly roam. A corpse should be left well alone. I know how the secrets beckon so sweetly. They're the same thing, okay?
So do you think they have like a team meeting?
Do you think they're competing with each other to see who's doing a better job?
Like maybe there's a bonus at the end of the year?
The problem is, in order for Brador to do anything at all, Maria has to be dead. Unless people just sneak past Maria. If Maria's playing dead all day, like, she probably does doze off occasionally.
I know, and there's this glass of wine next to her. Yeah. I mean, you know what? Realistically, she can't just sit there all day. She probably has like a 9 to 5 shift and then she leaves. She goes stand to the gardens, she talks to Adeline.
Do you think she's friends with Adeline because that lift takes forever to come down, so she's stuck talking to her?
Like water cooler talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. You defeat Maria, so then Brador's on call.
There's a slight difference here, which I think you've just picked up on, right?
Okay, yeah.
Maria has standard shifts.
Yeah.
Brador is basically in the gig economy. He's just looking for invasions where he can get them.
He's like Uber invasions.
Yeah, he's waiting for something more permanent to come along. And he's working from home. The Healing Church are a dynamic organization. They're responding to the market in their own ways, and there's 2 different streams they've adopted. It's a mixture of on-site and remote.
That's amazing. Healing Church isn't all that bad.
No, they are.
Do you think they have like Pizza Fridays?
Is that what Volta's weapon is for? Approximately 50 minutes ago, Sin said, "This will be short and it'll be much better than the last one."
Thank you, Sophie. An interesting line that Brador says later, once you come face to face with him. Well, look who's there. Welcome to my quarters. I've never entertained a guest before. Are you going to kill me? After all you've done, kill me, as if to right your wrongs. Ha ha ha. And he also says, what is it? Aren't you going to kill me, or perhaps beg my forgiveness? Well, leave off. What's done is done. Ha ha ha. So, what is he trying to convey here?
He just said it.
Thank you, Sophie.
What he's conveying is right. There is this, like, cycle of violence. There's a cycle of, like, terrible things happening and people trying to cover it up. And what he's basically saying is, you've done so much wrong as a hunter. All these people are dead, like Ludwig's dead, Maria's dead, Gascoigne's dead. Depending on when you do this in the game, maybe Mikolash is dead. Well, Mikolash dead anyway. Like, Yharnam's a ruin and everything. And also, like, as a hunter, you are carrying the sins of the prior hunters. So, like, the murder of Cos, all the Bergenworth stuff, it's kind of on you as well, even if you didn't personally do it. So it's like, so much has gone wrong. Do you think that you can undo that, you can deal with that, you can confront that by killing me, it won't make a difference? And he's right, because killing him doesn't make a difference. Killing a baby makes a difference, but not Brador.
Thank you, Sophie. So now, let's talk about the Red Phantom Brador.
Certainly.
What does he look like?
He looks like Brador with dyed hair. He's a different model. He has a younger face. His beard is black instead of grey.
And Sophie,
Mm-hmm.
what are the locations that we encounter Phantom Brador?
The fishing hamlet times 4.
Specifically?
Alright. He shows up on a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
You're crossing the bridge to where the parasite farm is. He's like, oh, no.
And when you kill him there, you get a piece of his armor.
Yes, I think that's the bloodied armbands.
Okay, cool.
I'm slightly. I am not 100% on which
Well, Sophie,
location is. Oh.
I have a note here that says bloodied armbands defeat Brador's Phantom at the location event 2.
Yeah, which is event 2.
Yes.
Thank you, Sen. So yeah, I'm going to assume that's event 2. Um, what we'll just call event 3 question mark is if you go below that bridge, there's like some stairs that go up into an almost entirely empty room. If you go up that stairs, Brador will appear behind you and try to ambush you on the way up. He shows up in the tunnel on the way to Cos, and then he shows up for the final time outside his own cell. All of these phantoms can be beaten by running past them.
And if you defeat him, I think this is the order. You get the bloodied armbands, the beast hide garb,
Mm-hmm.
the bloodied trousers,
Mm-hmm.
and Brador's testimony.
Yes.
Now, Sophie,
Yes.
Red Phantom Brador
Mm-hmm.
is Brador in his prime,
Yeah.
and he's known as the church assassin. What kind of church assassinations did he do in his prime in the real world?
Well, there was a cleric beast. You had a look in your eye where I thought you were going to be like an assassin. Another name for an assassin is a hitman.
Oh my god!
Was Brador? Was he actually trying to be our tutor?
Hi, Sin here, with a very special quiz for the cultists. The quiz only has one question. The question being, why did the word hitman elicit such a strong reaction in Sophie and I? Please post your answers below. And back to the podcast.
The one unique thing, I guess, about Brador's Phantom is that, I mean, firstly, it's the only genuine NPC invader in the game. Like, there are hostile NPCs, but they don't invade. This is the one time it happens. Like, there's the hostile hunters in the Nightmare Frontier. There's, like, the Bloody Crow and people like that, but Brador invades.
Mhm.
But the other thing about Brador as an invader is that he drinks lead elixir. He's the only NPC that does that.
And what does that do?
Well, what it does is it's basically Iron Flesh from Dark Souls. It ups your defense and it gives you unlimited poise, which basically means you can't stun lock him. The downside is that it makes you move really slowly.
Mhm.
But like the significance of that story-wise is that it specifies that the lead elixirs is something that's only found in the Nightmare. So Brador is presumably like he's got the supply of lead elixir because he's in the Nightmare all the time. So it's like this crystallized fear in a flask that he's drinking. Liquefied fear, I suppose.
So you're saying he drinks lead?
I wouldn't put it past him. Well, no, it's like when they used to make graphite flavored energy drink. It's basically that.
So I googled lead because I wanted to see if drinking lead gives you gray skin or something. So maybe
Right.
because the red phantom's drinking lead, the incel Brader's skin is turning gray.
Right.
And here it says, in Quebec, the concentration of lead in drinking water is generally very low. And I'm like, I'm a little worried. Let's see lead in Australia. Lead in drinking water in Australia. The maximum acceptable level of lead in drinking water has been
Mm-hmm.
established by the NHMRC,
Well, what is it?
the National Health and Medical Research Council.
Yeah, but what's the maximum level? This is like absolute political spin that you would see like in action. It's like, Prime Minister, what is the story behind the rise in lead in drinking water? Well, the maximum levels have been established. What are they? Well, they've been established. Hi, Sophie here. Sin's asked me to thank everybody who made it this far into the podcast, which is really not a good sign when you think about it. If you're new to the podcast, you're probably wondering why do these people have so many patrons. They don't seem to be able to do it very well. But you're probably also wondering, what's the deal with Ludwig being the killer of Maria? Well, unlike other Dark Souls and Bloodborne lore experts who apply various tools of textual analysis and historical comparison to their understanding of the game's story, Sin realized immediately that Ludwig had killed Maria. Because he looked sketchy. And you know you can't argue with that because he's a fucking horse with a sword. Now here you might say, Sin. Quite a lot of the characters in the video game Bloodborne do fit the descriptor sketchy, vague though it is, and Sin would no doubt reply, yes, but Ludwig is sketchy in a way that's like... Back to the podcast, I promise it's almost over.
So, Sophie.
Yes.
Back to Brador.
Yes, Sin.
He was known as the Church Assassin.
He was a church assassin. So he's introducing himself like, yeah, I'm Brador. They call me the church assassin.
What kind of assassinations, generally speaking, did he do for the church?
Well, there was at least one cleric-based.
I know, but I mean, generally speaking, do you think it could be to kill people who find out about the plague, to kill people who are like the Healing Church's political opponents?
If you assume the fishing hamlet is a real place, which it has to be, he might actually have killed people who tried to go there.
That's really interesting. So do you think his partner maybe wanted to reveal the truth to the world about what's going on in the fishing hamlet? And then Brador killed him, but then went out and killed another beast, and then said, oh, I had to kill my partner because he's transformed. Look, I'm wearing his hide. Haha, totally normal. Phantom Brador has two weapons, the Ludwig rifle and the Bloodletter. And Sophie, if I wanted to acquire my own Bloodletter, how should I proceed?
Well, you have to go to Brador in the cell. And then there's a number of different strategies you can employ. So Brador has 1 hit point. So make sure you have something in your inventory capable of dealing 1 hit point of damage. So if all you have is the lock shield or the wooden shield, that's not going to work. You're going to have to find something else. A good option would be the flame sprayer because it has quite a wide arc. So you're less likely to miss them.
Okay, but there's still a chance, like if you stand too far away, if
That's
let's
true.
say you aim at the
That's
wall.
true. If you equip rapid poison gems in your inventory, you could just repeatedly roll into Brador, and eventually that would proc. A good way to kill Brador is actually to have already killed Brador, and then use the Bloodletter. Because that has an AoE attack that won't miss.
Okay.
The Cos Parasite also has an AoE attack centered on the character, so if you just stand next to him and press L2, that will kill Brador.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I use a rock?
Yes, 1 rock will kill Brador, but you can only carry a maximum of 20. So you'll have to aim very, very carefully. With 1 hit point, Ariana's baby is twice as tough as him.
Thank you, Sophie. Once you kill the incel Brador, what kind of drops can you get?
The Bloodletter. You also get a Blood Drag, if you have Corruption equipped.
And can you get his equipment if you didn't kill the other Bradors?
No, the other Bradors will just immediately stop spawning, but their equipment drop will be where they would spawn. So if you kill Brador in the cell and go back to the hamlet, you'll just see like those items will be on the floor in the spot where there would normally be a Brador invasion.
Thank you, Sophie. I'm honored to serve.
She's trying to steal my spot on the podcast.
Now, Sophie, I actually have a fun little fact about the Bloodletter.
Mm-hmm. Is this the French name for it?
Yes.
Yes. Sacre bleu.
Well, in French, the Bloodletter is called lettre de sang, which means letter of blood.
Yeah.
But letter meaning a letter you put in an envelope, you know?
Yeah.
So do you think the reason why Brador has 1 HP is because he's been using the Bloodletter to write letters?
Karate is in the cell, and she's like, use a pen, Brador. Thank you for listening. What you just heard was actually a remake of an older episode that just wasn't up to our usual standards. That old episode is now safely sealed away in a vault on patreon.com/SinclairLore. But you can hear this extract that is probably the only listenable part, so you never have to go there.
It's not clear when Ludwig takes over from German, but it's from Ludwig's era, basically. And he's literally in the cell, next to Ludwig. The whole Hunter's Nightmare situation, this place was probably just going to be like a prison in Yharnam. The way that it's in the Nightmare confuses everything, so it's like, well, how is the church operating a prison in the Nightmare?
Was the prison going to be in Yharnam or in Hamwick?
I think it was going to be under the cathedral in Yharnam. Looks like that was...
Okay.
Yeah. Like, the church just would have had a prison where they locked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hunters who were getting blood drunk or had seen too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. You mentioned something about Hamwick at some point.
Oh, well, there's early shots that show Amelia in the Witch of Hamwick's boss room. And we were thinking, well, alright, maybe that was just, they had that boss finished and they put her in that room to kind of show her off. But if you look at the actual image, the wooden... It's really hard to tell, but it is, missing. The sort of wooden beam in the middle of that room that you can go over, that's not there. And so, it would have been a big open area where you could fight a big beast boss like Amelia. And we know also that Amelia, wasn't supposed to be in the Grand Cathedral initially. She was somewhere else. And, that room in general, it is kind of reminiscent of Ludwig, because you have this, big open space and there's just corpses, a big room full of corpses, like Ludwig's room.
Right.
And then next to that, there's, this, it's like that hunter is it's like a corpse of a hunter in a cell, almost, locked away. And I'm starting, and we know now that Vicar Amelia started off as a character just called Saint Laura. So I'm wondering if, maybe that area where you fight Amelia and there's the hunter in the cell, if that started off Oh, the other thing we need to point out is that, the interior of Witch's Abode, which is what we're talking about, it in absolutely no way matches the exterior. It's like a reverse TARDIS. You go into this enormous building, and it's just one little tiny walkway, one tiny flight of stairs that leads to a really tiny room and then nothing. But from the outside, it's this huge mansion. Are you still there?
Yeah. I'm just listening.
Yeah, I heard a beeping noise, and I thought...
that's the microwave.
Yeah.
It's just hey, you haven't had a snack in a while.
Yeah. It's going to be some merch you're going to sell, the snack alarm.
Yeah.
It's like an app, and every half an hour it reminds you to have another snack.